Hi everyone, welcome back. We are in the world of ethnography and it seems like you've already had some questions. So this is technically Wednesday's lecture that I am about to start, part 2 of ethnography. So if you've already watched the Monday lecture, this is now the second lecture. You really need to watch these though to understand the assignments. I'm getting a lot of people saying, I don't know how to do the assignment. And then I ask them, have you watched the lecture? Oh, no. Okay, please watch the lectures. I haven't told you how to do the coding assignment at the end of the first lecture, Monday. I told you we will discuss that on Wednesday. So I'm getting videos up as soon as I can. Some of you want to do everything in one day. I'm still trying to follow a semi-structured school week. So again, this is Wednesday's lecture, and even when we were in class, traditionally a lot of the times, remember, Wednesday was saved for explaining the assignment. So let's do a little review about what you should have watched for Monday. Monday, I took you into the interpretive world. Remember, we are there now. We are no longer making surveys. We're no longer gathering statistics. We are no longer analyzing data in that way. And we talked about what ethnography was, where it came from, some different ways of looking at ethnography, performance ethnography, autoethnography. We started talking about how we make claims or research questions for ethnography and interpretive studies, even sources of data. And let's go back and really kind of channel in on this today. This is the part 2 of the lecture. So remember, we're not collecting surveys. There is no data to crunch. We are in the interpretive paradigm. We are collecting primarily interviews. So we go and we interview people. Chances are that when we go to interview people, we do two things. We are most likely going to tape record the interview. All serious researchers, ethnographers, interpretive, we will ask to record the whole interview. And that's really the only way we can get good, reliable data is to actually record the interview. So if you take the class in ethnography, you will be going out and interviewing people. You're going to want to record those interviews. You're going to want to take notes during the interviews. And what are you going to do when you go to interview someone? Well, I started talking about interviews at the end of last time, and I said you are actually going to learn a ton in the ethnography course about the appropriate way to interview someone to get the most out of them. Because again, remember, the interpretive paradigm is all about rich detail and description. We really want to get that person's story. So we're going to ask certainly semi-structured, fully structured interviews. It's going to change how we ask questions and the kinds of questions we ask. And if we're interviewing 10 different people about one phenomenon, we have to keep that interview and the questions fairly stable across the 10 people. Because let's think about, why are you interviewing 10 people about a particular subject? Well, you're hoping to see if you can find any themes or patterns among those 10 people. So if I said I wanted to interview people who had a Holocaust survivor in their family, I would want to think about the kinds of questions I'm going to ask. I'm going to want to keep that stable over those 10 interviews if I found 10 people. And I'm going to want to ask similar questions, because what I'm looking for, is there anything in particular about people who had a Holocaust survivor in their family that made them different in some way? Do they have a different story arc? And so I'm always going to be looking for themes or patterns in the data. And that's when we got to this. One of the ways we do that is through transcription and coding. It is the primary way we analyze data. So, scientific method, we analyze data through statistics. We're not doing that anymore. We're doing something that is actually quite long and tedious. And a lot of people find that this isn't for them either. But again, let's go through. So when you interview someone, you record it. You have to go back and transcribe that recording verbatim, which means you type it all out. There are some programs that can help you transcribe now. If you're recording on a voice mechanism that may be able to transcribe or type it right over into your computer if you download it. If not, and I did coding in grad school, we did it by starting and stopping the tape and typing everything verbatim. And one of the reasons we have to do that is, again, that's our information. That's what we're making our analysis from. So I'm going to switch and show you now a coded transcript. Well, actually just an interview transcript. Here is an interview transcript, and it always looks like this. They usually have the date of the interview, how long it was, start of the transcript. And again, this is all typed out. And you see the interviewer, thank you for participating, the name of the participant, or a pseudonym if they don't want their name used, and we go through the transcript. What's interesting is everything is typed verbatim, even if the grammar is not correct in the transcript. We want, like Anna here, that's hard, I think. You want all those ums, all the pauses, yes, laughs, I suppose, I haven't traveled that much. This is exactly how you transcribe an interview. So the good news here is I'm not going to ask you to go out and interview someone and transcribe that whole email. So this is an example of a nice interview transcript. Okay, now if you have been to Blackboard and looked at, not your discussion exercise, but let's go to assignments and looked at your coding assignment that you couldn't do until, again, I told you, what does it look like you have here? You have an interview. This was an interview that's already been done and it's already been transcribed. And you can see this is an interview. The course, the gender of the participant is female, age 20. And CD here is the interviewer. So when I say culture to you, what comes to your head? This is the participant, the 20-year-old female. It kind of defines a person, country, where they come from, like myself. So you have this. This is your coding assignment. What you have is a full transcription. What you don't have is, how do we make sense out of this? How do I actually find anything meaningful in 20 pages of typed transcription? Now let me let you in on another secret. Last semester, I made the class code all 20 pages of this transcription. Your assignment is to code the first 10 pages. So let me talk a little bit about then, how do you code? What are you looking for in this interview? Well, coding is very personal. In all honesty, there isn't necessarily one right way, and that confuses students. I have some of those codings that I'm going to share with you. I tend to like to outline when I code. You'll notice this blank margin off in the right, and that's because I always type my interviews with more margin in the right so I can then make notes. If any of you are the type of person who makes notes along the margins in books, you're coding. Welcome, you're an ethnographer. Coding means you're pulling the main ideas out of these paragraphs and giving me a little bit of a notion of what you think is important. And you can't highlight every single sentence. It doesn't work that way. I always thought that was funny when I saw people with textbooks highlighting, and they're highlighting every single sentence. Hopefully by now in college, you've developed some kind of knowledge for what is important and what is not. So I'm going to help you with coding this first paragraph, but let's look at one other example of what I mean by coding, because I'm sure you're still a little confused. This is a qualitative research methods coding exercise, very much like what I'm asking you to do. And this is what your initial coding might look like. I actually think this one's a little messy, but I tend to be a little neater when I code. Sometimes we underline or highlight certain words, but we're trying to get the main idea out. What is it generally that they're talking about here? But you can see when we hand code things, there isn't necessarily a system to it. So this is what I am looking for. I've given you the interview. You are now going to go in those first 2 pages and tell me off to the side, you are going to type. You can handwrite and use different colors if you want to. You can print it off and handwrite it and upload it back up. I find coding much easier to handwrite and underline and color code things. It's going to be more difficult. Normally, I have you do this coding right in class by hand, but it is going to be more difficult because we are online. So taking a document like this and being able to edit it becomes more difficult. We can edit certain documents in PDF if we have the programs to do so. So let me show you a little bit about that if you are unaware of that technology. So this little button over here says Edit PDF. And I can actually, it's converting it to editable text and images. And now I can actually go in and start typing and changing things. I would do this in a different color font. And of course, make my notes about what I think is happening in this particular transcript. So that's just showing you how you can edit a PDF comment and add texts, add text. We could add text over here if we wanted to and say, you know, she seems calm about the interview. Boom. And I might color code that. Then down here, I can add text and say, okay, where is she from? This is what I'm doing. I'm coding. I like to do everything in outline format because I'm a speech teacher. And if you took COMM 103 or Speech 100 or whatever it was and you had to make an outline, it's the best way to have main ideas with sub-ideas. So I'm going to show you that as well. But again, there is no correct way to code. It's your own note-taking system that makes sense to you when you are trying to pull the information out. So let's go back to our assignment here because you have the interview and it's now up to you to figure out what's important. So I have an actual document from 350 here and it's coded and they've done a bit of underlining in the text as well as outlining. There are some great stuff in this first paragraph that I would want to pull out of here as a main point. Overall, what is the main thing they're talking about in this paragraph? And it is not only culture, but I think it begins here with the difference between American and European culture. So I might actually make a Roman numeral #1 difference between Europe and American culture. And what are some of those differences? Well, this person, as you can barely probably see down here in my picture, has a numeral 1, no culture in the U.S. She compares Europe and France. She talks about food and socialization norms and even uses some arrows to point to what she's talking about. So you can see that. It's not wrong. There isn't a wrong way to do this. It's what makes sense to get the information out. So again, I wanted a pencil. I would certainly do a Roman numeral 1. I would write Europe, you know, compare American culture. And maybe that's all I note in my #1. But I'm probably going to write, you know, a subpoint A. And of course, I find it very interesting that she says Americans have no culture. It's interesting to me because this is something that I think is true. So Americans have no culture. Definitely want to put that down. That sounds important. Where she says that France has a distinct culture and Europe has a distinct culture. So we have Europe, distinct culture. What makes those cultures distinct? Well, for instance, their food and the way they socialize. So I am doing my own kind of little coding right here. And I'm hoping, I know this is odd. Like I said, normally I would teach this on a blackboard, so it becomes a little bit more difficult to do this way. But I would make a little outline and I would probably draw references and A, B's, 1, 2. What you're trying to do is tell me what is the main point or the main themes that are coming out of each and every one of these paragraphs. Again, I like using outline. I think it's clean. I think it helps you stay organized. This person obviously was just jotting some notes and doing some underlining. That can work as well. But again, there isn't necessarily a correct way. And I know it's easier to see visuals. So again, here's just a look at what your assignment will look like. Can you do this online? Of course. I showed you how you can edit it. What happens if I turn this into a Word document is not good. It doesn't transcribe well, and parts of the interview and the words go haywire. So I'm not going to be able to do that. You have the PDF. You have two options for doing this, coding. You can print it, hand code like we've just talked about, use different colors, whatever you'd like to do. Once you hand code it, you can then take pictures and upload it back to Blackboard as a PDF. If you are, again, more savvy and you know how to edit a PDF document like I was showing you, you could do these things right here and you can highlight them in different colors and have fun. As I'm trying to find my colors. There's my colors. So maybe I say I'm going to put that in green. And oopsie, I don't think I did do it. Yay, she seems calm. Where is she from? Now, ideally, this particular transcript would be a little further over to the left so that I would have more margin to work with. Once you're also in this PDF, let's see, I was born in Hobart, so actually that's, let me put this down here. This is where that should have been. I think one of my dad's parents, Tasmania, so Tasmania as well. She mentions that twice. That might be important. So we might want to highlight that image, and you would go over here and you could use your editing tools and go back and underline that. Here's your highlighter. Let's highlight Tasmania. There we go. So again, if you have Adobe software, Adobe Pro, you can edit it right in the PDF. Some of you, again, may have to print this off and do the coding by hand. But it should end up looking somewhat like the one I showed you, somewhat like this here as well. And as I was going through and looking for all these different coding examples online to show you what it looks like, you can see there's a bunch of different ways people go about making sense of data, right down even to sticky notes, highlighting, different colors. This is all what we call thematic analysis. We have to take an interview and decide. Here's another example of exactly what we're doing. Here's the interview over here, and this person is coding it. They're talking about self-worth. They're talking about insight into job roles and future career aspirations. These are the main points, and they're highlighting. Another thing that's interesting when you're doing transcriptions is if you see a phrase that keeps reappearing from the interviewee. That becomes very important and is something you definitely want to highlight, because if they keep saying over and over in different parts of the interview, Americans have no culture, Americans have no culture, that's probably a very, very important theme because they're saying it over and over again. So look for that. So while we did not have a coding exercise to physically do in class, this is what we mean by transcribe the data, type out the whole interview, and then code it. Find the main points, find the themes within the interview. What is important in each of the things that the participant is saying? What do you want to pull out and focus on? And this is really the last slide in the ethnography lesson. And the key to understanding qualitative research really lies in this idea that meaning is socially constructed by people in interaction with other people. And that's where interviewing gives us that story. But we have to be able to go in and code the interview and pull things out of it to come to some conclusion about what that meaning is. I have to hear the whole story. I have to go back and I have to remember what was said, and I have to be able to find those key points. So that is your short lesson in how to code. I want you to give it a shot. You are, again, working with this transcript I have given you. And underline, use Roman numerals or certainly outline methods, but I need your notes, your attempt at coding and making sense of every paragraph in that interview. That is what you're doing. So that is part 2 of ethnography. I hope that you are able to work with that assignment, give it your best shot. I'm really just looking for you to try and make sure you have something written in that document. Obviously, I am here to help troubleshoot anything you might have with the interview and help you along. All right, there is Wednesday's lecture, and believe it or not, we are already done with the interpretive paradigm. Interpretive paradigm, qualitative, it's all about themes, interviews, coding. That is the paradigm. So we're actually, if you look at the syllabus, next week we're going to be moving on into our very last paradigm. And so hopefully now I've given you an idea of what to expect if you take a class in quantitative and what to expect if you take a class in qualitative. Interviews, transcriptions, and codings, looking for patterns, themes, and important things that stand out across interviews. Stay safe as always, be healthy, and I will have office hours on Friday if you have questions about the assignment. Take care. Bye.